What's up, YouTube? We watching this YouTube video here. We're gonna react to it. It's serial killers that are still on the loose today. So, y'all motherfuckers be careful if y'all go out there and see somebody or see somebody look familiar to these people. Be careful. All right, let's play this shit.
Imagine the fear if you lived in an area where a serial killer is operating, randomly killing people for years and is still at large, never knowing where exactly they are or who they will target next. In the US alone, there are dozens of active serial killers still on the loose in 2024, waiting to claim their next unsuspecting victim.
Shit crazy.
We're going to be taking a look at 5 suspected serial killers from around the world who are likely still alive, but have never been apprehended for their heinous crimes. Lock your doors, and let's begin.
Hide your kids, hide your wives. And if you are watching this, subscribe. By the way, it's, subscribe. It's right down there. You can do it. You can do it. Hit the button. You want to do it? No, you want to do it. You want to watch more of these with me. 5 days a week.
Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes.
Pedro Lopez.
In 2005, there was controversy when the Guinness Book of Records listed Pedro Lopez as the most prolific serial killer. The dubious listing has now been removed from the book, but the killer has not been removed from the streets.
That nigga look nice.
Pedro Alonso Lopez was born into a large Colombian family in 1948. He had a difficult childhood. His mother was a sex worker, and his father was murdered in La Valencia 6 months before he was born.
Damn!
From the age of 8, he was homeless and wandered the streets of Bogota and was frequently sexually abused. At the age of 12, he was adopted by an American immigrant family, but fled after he was sexually assaulted by a teacher. He fell into petty crime and was jailed for car theft in 1969. Whilst in prison, he was attacked by 3 other inmates, who he later killed, although strangely, he only got 2 years for their murders. After his release in 1978, he travelled to Peru.
How you kill somebody? 2 people. And only get 2 years? This nigga, is he the police? Does he work for the police? Cause you telling me you can take somebody's life and only get 2 years in prison? That nigga had to be a menace. He probably was doing crazy shit in jail. They was like, man, fuck that, man. Free this nigga, man.
Where he tried to abduct a 9-year-old girl from a local indigenous tribe. The tribe members retaliated and captured Lopez, stripped him and buried him in sand. He was saved by a missionary, but was expelled from the country, but later claimed he killed over 100 girls there, mostly indigenous, and taken off the streets. In April 1980, the areas around Ambato, Ecuador, were hit by floods that uncovered the remains of several missing young girls. Lopez had been living in Ecuador, and authorities suspected he had killed the girls, and he was arrested after he tried to abduct a 12-year-old girl. In custody, he refused to speak, but eventually confessed to an undercover prisoner that he had killed over 200 in Ecuador, 100 in Peru, and many more in Colombia. His modus operandi was to lure young girls away from the public spaces with a gift, before attacking them and killing them with his bare hands. He also claimed he occasionally exhumed the bodies from their burial site and had tea parties with their corpses. His motive, he claimed, was because he was abused as a young boy and aimed to do the same to as many girls as he could. After confessing to authorities and leading them to the burial sites of 53 of his victims, he was convicted of murder in 1980 and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Incredibly, this was the maximum prison sentence available in Ecuador at the time. In August 1994, Lopez was released 2 years early and was deported to Colombia and detained as an illegal immigrant on arrival. But unable to make a case against him, Lopez was instead declared insane and admitted to a mental hospital. In 1998, Lopez was released and immediately disappeared. Why
they keep releasing this nigga? He has, on paper, killed 2 people, admitted to killing like hundreds of little girls and shit. They get this nigga in the asylum. Keep in mind, he did all the shit he did. and they put him back on the street. This was purposely done, if you ask me. I feel like they purposely did this shit. Like, it had to be. Let me make sure I'm still recording. My bad. I had to get that right.
Last reported sighting of him was in September 1999 when he visited the National Civil Registry to renew his citizenship card. It's rare to know the identity of a serial killer, and for him to still be free in the community, but that is exactly what happened to the monster of the Andes. Despite being a suspect in a number of murders, Lopez remains a fugitive, even to this day. He'd be 75 at the time of this video, and as far as anyone knows, he is still very much alive, and potentially continues to kill, but no one knows where.
Hi, we're Charity Water. If we lost you at Charity, we get it.
I was going to turn 26 and lose my mom's coverage, so I need to find my own plan.
Danilovsky Maniac. Russia has seen its fair share of atrocities over the years. Bombings, war zones, radiation emergencies, and serial killers. In fact, Russia is second to only the US when it comes to the number of serial killers. However, there is one perpetrator who has continually evaded capture. Known as the Maniac with Dull Eyes, or the Danilovsky Maniac, this unknown individual is responsible for the murders of at least 7 women between 2004 and 2007. All of his victims were young, some with the same first name, were all strangled with a makeshift garrote, and disposed of inside abandoned buildings or construction sites around the city of Cherepovets. The killer on each occasion was careful to cover his tracks before leaving a unique calling card on the walls of each crime scene, crude outlines of pornographic drawings in black chalk. Understandably, the city, and especially young women, were in fear of when the maniac would strike again. Over the course of 18 months, he had taken the lives of 6 victims, when suddenly the killing stopped. For 2 years the maniac stopped, and the local people breathed a sigh of relief, believing he was maybe dead, imprisoned for another crime, or resumed his killing spree in a different area. However, on June 11, 2007, a 17-year-old girl walked along a forest belt near the Oktyabrskaya Bridge when she was abducted in broad daylight and murdered. Fears of the maniac's revival began to creep in, and sadly, when police found Natea's remains in a local park, their fears were confirmed. On this occasion, however, a number of eyewitnesses caught sight of a man near to where Natea had been abducted, and police finally had some identifiable features.
Damn.
He was between 30 and 50 years old, quite short and stocky, with balding brown-grey hair, with dull, soulless eyes and glasses. A composite sketch of the perpetrator was drawn up and distributed around the city, and a reward was offered to anyone who could help catch the maniac. After his 7th murder, the maniac disappeared again, and has never been seen or heard from since. There was another murder in November 2011, when a
For your name to be the Maniac, that means you done some diabolical shit. Like, this nigga nickname is however you say that shit, Maniac. You know the terrible shit you have to have done to get the nickname the Maniac, my nigga? Crazy.
18-year-old student disappeared, and her corpse was found a year later in a hole behind an empty building. But despite the obvious similarities, this death was never officially linked to the maniac. So today, unless he is locked up or dead, the Danilovsky Maniac is still at large, possibly biding his time before he strikes again. The Eastbound Strangler.
I ain't mean to laugh, but that's...
In the autumn of 2006, a serial killer was on the loose in Atlantic City. The first known victim, 35-year-old Kim Raffo, was found by 2 women who stumbled upon her remains behind the now demolished Golden Key Motel. The motel was located along a 5-lane stretch of Route 40, known as the Black Horse Pike. The motel already had a seedy reputation and was frequently used by sex workers. On November 20th, more victims were found, the bodies of 23-year-old Tracy Ann Roberts, 42-year-old Barbara Brador, and 19-year-old Molly Diltz, were all found discarded in a water-filled drainage ditch at the back of the same hotel.
Damn.
All four were fully clothed, except for their feet, which the perpetrator used to anchor them to the sides of the ditch so they wouldn't float away. Their bodies were meticulously staged, with their arms stretched out and their heads pointing east, giving birth to the sinister nickname, the Eastbound Strangler. The women were placed about 320 feet apart, and no attempt to cover them had been made. Atlantic City detectives believed the murders were committed by one man, and individually killed and dumped over a 5-week period. Because the victims were out in the open and diligently displayed, investigators ruled out any link with the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach, who murdered several women between 1990 and 2011. He was free to kill for many years until June 2024, when a Manhattan architect named Rex Heuermann was charged with 6 of the murders. Initially, the murders caused panic in the area, and the motel was nicknamed the Motel from Hell. But the killer remained elusive, despite extensive work by detectives. Criminal profiler John Kelly believes the killer has a foot fetish and possibly killed as part of some kind of religious ritual.
Like feet and shit.
Here is part of the detailed criminal profile he put together of the killer. He believes the perpetrator is a local male who is familiar with the Atlantic City area and the disposal site of his victims. He has a very organized personality, which influences his personal and everyday activities, including his work. He is very rigid and structured in his everyday life. He likely has a foot fetish with a collection of women's shoes and socks, and is antisocial and narcissistic. In his pre-offensive mode, he may have spoken about the sinful nature of prostitution, or he may have voiced economic concerns about prostitutes destroying Atlantic City's value or reputation. In his post-offensive mode, he would say things like, "They got what they deserved," or "good riddance." The killer likely follows news about his murders, has a prior record of sexual or physical abuse towards women, and is likely detached from his father and abused as a child. To date, there hasn't been any update on DNA recovered from the scene, or if it has been tested using the latest advancements. Kelly believes the perpetrator likely killed before and after the 4 victims were found. As happens with some serial killers, he may be going through a cooling off period. Maybe he got married, had a child, or is locked up for a different offense. What is known for sure is the Eastbound Strangler is still at large in 2024, and assuming he is still alive, is free to kill again. Tips can be sent to johnkellyprofiler@gmail.com, your local police department, or the Atlantic City Police Department at 609-347-5780. The Chicago Strangler. 50 women, predominantly black, have been murdered in a strikingly similar way. Despite what seems conclusive evidence, the Chicago police deny that a single person is behind all the slayings, and that a serial killer is terrorizing the city streets. However, what is clear is an alarming amount of women have been murdered, and hardly any of them have been solved. To put that into perspective, between 1999 and 2018, 75 women between the ages of 18 and 58 were strangled to death in Chicago, but only 24 have been solved. All the unsolved cases have similarities. All the women were found dumped in abandoned buildings or alleyways in the south and west side of Chicago. Around half of them were sex workers, and the majority were black. Some victims were raped and beaten, others were bound and gagged. Some of them had plastic bags tied over their heads. Most were stripped of their clothing, and some were set on fire.
This nigga diabolical.
One thing is for sure, they all met brutal ends. Each of these women had family who are grieving and children who have lost their mother. Despite the frequency and violence of these murders, few have garnered significant media attention. They are often only briefly mentioned as a woman being thrown into the trash or left in an abandoned building. Many people believe that a single serial killer, dubbed the Chicago Strangler, is responsible. Thomas Hargrove, the founder of the Murder Accountability Project, holds the belief that there is a pattern in the Chicago Strangler case that the police are overlooking. Hargrove established MAP in 2015 after searching the serial killer Gary Ridgway, who was responsible for the deaths of as many as 70 people, before his arrest in 2001. It took the police a considerable amount of time to recognize that Ridgway was the sole perpetrator. The majority of the victims were found outdoors, often in alleyways or abandoned properties, which is quite unusual. About 3/4 of the victims had clear signs of a sexual motive to their deaths. Most of them were found partially clothed or naked, and Hargrove finds it hard to believe that 51 women were killed by 51 separate men or women. Strangely, the killings stopped in 2014, only to start again in 2017. This has been seen with other serial killers, when they are briefly incarcerated for different crimes, or go many years without striking again. The Chicago police have met with Hargrove and studied his data, but are still not convinced that they are looking for an individual serial killer. DNA evidence collected from the scenes have indicated at least 21 different individuals are responsible. This means that potentially 21 killers are in the Chicago area who have yet to be apprehended. So what's going on here? 51 women murdered, none of them have been solved. Many people believe this is the work of the serial killer. But regardless, whether one person or many is responsible for these killings, they are potentially still out there.
Everywhere I go, every smile I see, I know you are there.
Get the fuck out of here. Damn.
The Little Rock Stabber.
The Little Rock Stabber, nigga.
On April 29, 2021, the police department posted a video on YouTube alerting its citizens in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, about a serial killer who was using a knife to attack and brutally kill random individuals.
Damn.
The first murder occurred on Monday, August 24, 2020, when 64-year-old Larry McChristian was stabbed to death on Gain Street. Larry was not from Little Rock, but was in the city staying with his daughter, who was on probation. A few days before his murder, he had been taken to the emergency room by ambulance, but was released at around 6 AM on the 21st of August. The hospital tried to reach his daughter by phone, but were unable to, and so they gave Larry a bus token and information about homeless shelters. When her father failed to come home, his daughter alerted police, and 2 days later they found Larry's body, and were able to identify him from his hospital discharge papers. Eerie CCTV captured the attack and showed the perpetrator standing over Larry, watching him die. A second murder occurred on Wednesday, September 23, 2020. Again, the victim was an older man, aged 62, named Jeff Welch. He was found in an abandoned house, often used by the homeless. Despite the victim having multiple stab wounds, the police did not view the incident as murder.
I always be wondering, like, what lead people up to, like, doing some shit like this. Like, you just, some of your head just click and be like, man, I want to fuck some people up continuously. And, like, they get a thrill at that shit. That's some shit that's wild in itself. Like, I was just making sure it was still recording. That's wild in itself, bro. Like, you just go around taking niggas out just for the fun of it. Like, you enjoy that shit. It's crazy.
They also incorrectly described him as black. On April 11, 2021, Deborah Walker survived an attack by the Little Rock Stabber. Deborah was stabbed at least 15 times in a frenzied attack. Walker, who was known to the police for various crimes, told the police her attacker was a black male. However, it would later be revealed that she knew who attacked her. The day after the Walker attack, Marlon Franklin, age 40, was found dead on an overpass near 2710 Wright Avenue. She'd been stabbed multiple times. Several residents believed the serial killer was a man known as Juggler, who had pulled a knife on residents in the past and was known as a stalker. Juggler had been caught on CCTV, and his real name was known by residents. His third victim, and more importantly the police. The alleged killer is said to be in his late 40s. He is known to be a prolific drug user who has been detained due to his mental health. He has served 2 prison terms for domestic violence. The case garnered attention across social media websites and has led local vigilantes and self-proclaimed real-life superheroes, known only as Tothian, Master Legend, and Shadow Vision, to announce that they would hunt down the man responsible for the killings. But crucially, despite numerous witnesses and the survivor giving his name, he has not been arrested in connection with any of the attacks. Today, in 2024, his exact whereabouts are unknown, and if he chooses, it seems he is
Y'all
free
watch
to
out for that
continue
nigga
his
judgment,
killing
man.
spree. So that's it for this video.
Y'all watch out
That's
for
5
that
serial
judgment.
killers who may well be on the loose in 2020.
Well, that's the end of the video. It's a lot of maniacs literally out here, bro. A lot of people out here that's doing bad shit and doing bad stuff. Stay out the way, stay safe, and I'll see y'all niggas in the next video. I'm out.